After nearly 2 decades, a deeper look into the investigation explores a killer's disturbing history of violence.
I lifted the lid of the trash can, and the odor was the unmistakable smell of death,
Leading to the discovery of even more heinous crimes.
They found a adult male body, chopped multiple times in the back.
He had a bag over his face. This was an undeniable pattern.
And new interviews examine the motives that drove them to commit such unspeakable acts.
She attacked her because she hated her.
She was collecting those Social Security payments for about 2.5 years.
Leading to shocking new developments from behind bars.
Something unbelievable happened at the state prison.
She is cunning, sneaky, and I would not be surprised if she tries it again.
February 5th, 2001. At approximately 1:30 p.m., police in Las Vegas, Nevada receive an ominous call from the manager of a storage facility.
The concern that the storage unit manager had is that there had been numerous complaints of a foul odor emanating from somewhere in the storage facility. They said the odor was the unmistakable smell of death.
When officers arrive on the scene, the manager takes them to the storage unit in question.
The moment they rolled up the door, they're hit with a pungent scent of decaying flesh.
When they got in, they found a canister, a large garbage pail, like what you roll out to the curb at your house.
There was plastic wrap around the top of the trash receptacle, as well as duct tape.
They did a presumptive test for blood, which came back positive. That in turn led the authorities to pursue a telephonic search warrant, which would allow them to legally cut open the can.
Inside, I saw a human being in an advanced state of decomposition.
I've never seen one like that in my life. It was a terrible way to entomb someone after death.
They could not really tell how long the body had been there because this body basically was sealed in this contained environment for who knows how long.
Cause of death is impossible to determine, but the circumstances suggest foul play.
They noticed that there was a bag that appeared to be tied around this person's face.
Somebody had taken great care and pain and effort in order to try to seal this garbage can. It certainly was done by an individual that did not want this body to be discovered.
I found a wallet with a driver's license in the name of Christine M. Smith in a plastic bag in the unit.
They learned that this particular unit was leased out and rented out to a woman named Brookey West, who was Christine Smith's daughter.
Our initial belief is that the deceased person in the trash can was Brookey West's mother, but we didn't know. We had to confirm that. We needed to locate Brookey West to see what she had to say about the situation, to see what she knew.
For both Christine and Brookey, life had always been a challenge.
Christine Smith grew up in a rural Texas town, and her father was a truck driver. Her mom was a stay-at-home mother, and things started to go south for Christine at an early age.
from the way she talked about her life. She had one traumatic experience after another.
In 1947, Christine met an El Paso man named Leroy Smith.
Smith was somebody who just came out of the military. He was now looking for a job and to start his own family. And Christine Smith and Leroy, they caught each other's eye, and eventually they got married.
Leroy joined the police force, and the couple had 2 children, Brookey and a son named Travis.
At first, it seemed like this was a dream come true for Christine. But over time, she would find herself in an abusive relationship.
Her husband, even though he worked for the police, was not law-abiding.
He was a known white supremacist, and he also became very interested in the occult and Satanism. At one point, Leroy left Christine for a cocktail waitress.
Leroy took the children, sending Christine into a downward spiral. She began an affair of her own with a married man named David.
She fell madly in love with him, and over time realized that she'd been bamboozled, that he had no intention of leaving his wife, and that he was just using Christine for sex. She asked to meet him at a bar. The man showed up, sat down. Christine pulled out a shotgun and shot him at point-blank range.
I was like, oh my God, how could you do that? She said, he discarded me. I was angry at having been treated like garbage.
Christine was quickly arrested after shooting her lover. She ended up getting a sentence of 14 years for an attempt murder charge.
However, Christine was paroled after serving only 2 years of her sentence. Upon her release, she was determined to turn her life around.
Christine comes out, she reunites with Leroy, and she comes back looking for her children.
However, 9-year-old Brookey and 6-year-old Travis were now living under state-sponsored care.
Once Christine was incarcerated, Leroy Smith decided he didn't want anything to do with his kids anymore and dropped them off at an orphanage. One day, they got a huge surprise. Leroy showed up at the orphanage with Christine. She had recently been released from prison, and Leroy and Christine took the kids back.
Leroy moves the whole family to California.
After high school, Brookey briefly enlisted in the Army before transitioning to a career in technology.
Well, during the military, Brookey learned a lot of skills, and it was in that time period when computers became more and more prevalent. She has innate ability to understand coding, numbers, very detailed information that she's able to memorize and maintain.
Over the next 2 decades, Brookey found great success in the field of technical writing.
A technical writer is someone who produces documents. You might write a manual on how to install a computer program.
Life was pretty good. She was able to buy a house in Los Banos, California.
But her mother had some problems. Her mother had been sick one occasion, and she would take care of her mother. She would move back and forth between Las Vegas and San Francisco for work, so she kept residences both places.
My understanding is that Brookey moved her mom to Las Vegas because it was a lot cheaper at the time than living in California. There was activity that Christine liked. She enjoyed being close to the casinos.
Brookey split her time between the 2 states until 1997, when the 44-year-old permanently relocated to Las Vegas to live with her 65-year-old mother. The pair settled into a happy rhythm. But 4 years later, their reunion has ended in tragedy. A decomposed body has been discovered hidden in a storage unit rented by Brookey. And investigators want to know who it belongs to.
The can with the body inside was transported to the Clark County Coroner's Office, and a very unusual autopsy unfolded. They took the can and basically tipped it upside down and poured the contents out onto a gurney.
Absolutely liquefied body that was probably the first and only case that's come through here.
There was insect larvae, maggots, that were on and around the body. And authorities collected many samples of these insects.
The cause and manner of death was unknown. There was nothing obvious, no gunshot wounds, no stab wounds, none of the things you might associate with some kind of violent event.
The victim's teeth are intact, allowing the coroner to use dental records to positively ID the body as Christine Smith. One mystery has been solved, but more arise when detectives take a closer look at the items in the storage unit.
There were books dealing with witchcraft, books dealing with black magic, books dealing with Satanism, and things of that nature.
The crime scene itself was so unusual and so bizarre that you can't help but ask, could these be related? Could this involve Satanism, witchcraft, occult behavior?
Coming up, investigators dig into Christine and Brookey's past.
Some days you thought that they loved each other dearly, and other days you thought they hated each other.
And they uncover a second mysterious death.
There appeared to be a bag over the victim's face.
Detectives in Las Vegas, Nevada are investigating the disturbing death of 68-year-old Christine Smith. It's a crime scene unlike any they've ever encountered.
Of course, Las Vegas has a real dark side to it. But the idea of finding a garbage can with a body in it in a storage shed and books about witchcraft and Satanism, I mean, their minds were spinning as to what could possibly explain this.
Her daughter, Brookey West, is the first person they need to speak with.
They had a lot of questions regarding Christine Smith. First and foremost, how did she die? But the bigger question was, how did she get in that garbage can? And why is she in a storage unit that came back to Brookey West?
When police check Christine's last known address, they discover it was also leased to Brookey.
The two homicide detectives ended up getting a search warrant and going to her apartment.
They knock on the door and Brookey Lee West is not there. They went inside and started looking around. Clearly a nice apartment, lots of nice belongings in there.
There was not a lot of furniture in there, but clearly it had been occupied.
It appears that only Brookey had been living there. Investigators also find several pieces of suspicious evidence.
We found duct tape. We found what we believe to be the key to the lock for the storage room that Christine's body was in.
When they did a forensic analysis on that duct tape, they found that it was a perfect match to the duct tape that had been wrapped around the garbage can. Investigators then started to really take a close look at the paperwork that they found in the apartment, specifically bank records. They noticed that Brookey Lee West was collecting money, Social Security, that was supposed to go to her mother. And it made for a very suspicious circumstance and a likely scenario that Brookey was involved in her mother's death.
They speak to Christine and Brookey's neighbors to try to shed light on their relationship. What they learn is eye-opening.
Some days you thought that they loved each other dearly, and other days you thought they hated each other.
I didn't really want to get involved at all, you know, so Sandy told me a couple things about him every once in a while.
They had this kind of double-edged relationship. They would fight, they would be at odds with one another. It was a back and forth kind of up and down situation.
According to Christine's friends, the source of the conflict dated back to Brookey's childhood. Christine's own upbringing had left scars and poor boundaries for raising her daughter.
It seemed like Christine was very dysfunctional, and she needed Brookey for that dysfunction.
Christine basically taught Brookey how to be a criminal. When she was a child, they became shoplifters and swindlers and grifters, and so this was Brookey's role model. Growing up, it became apparent to Brookey that she needed to get away from her mother, so she decided to join the Army.
When the two reunited and began living together, the dynamic between them seemed to flip. Now, 44-year-old Brookey was the one in control.
When she offered to take care of her mother, she made it clear there were limitations. Christine was not allowed to have visitors to their home. She was not allowed to talk about what went on in their home or about her relationship with Brooke or anyone else.
In approximately January or February of 1998, Christine just seemed to fall off the face of the earth. When Christine's friends started to inquire about what happened, they started asking Brookey Lee West, you know, where's your mother?
What Brooke had told everyone is that she had been taken to live with her brother Travis.
The neighbors thought it was suspicious because she had heard Travis was severely mentally ill, that he was not able to take care of himself, that he was walking the streets and was homeless.
It just didn't make any sense at all, and they quickly concluded that this was all a big lie. She had not been seen since nearly 3 years prior to the discovery of her body.
To investigators, the news seems to confirm their suspicions about Brookey's involvement.
Well, about an hour after they left her apartment, the manager called and said that Brookey West had returned to the apartment, but had left. And the manager had a description of her vehicle.
At one point, they do in fact spot Brookey driving in her truck, and she is pulled over and taken into custody and arrested on a charge of murder for the killing of her mother.
The only thing that Brooke ever told the police was, my mom died of natural causes.
According to Brookey, she found her mother dead in 1999.
She claimed that she simply panicked and decided to dispose of her mother in the garbage can.
News of the horrific crime scene and Brookey's arrest seizes headlines across the country.
The circumstances were so unusual that it drew a lot of attention. And that media coverage made its way to California. Las Vegas police learned that Christine Smith wasn't the first person close to Brookey Lee West who had died under suspicious circumstances. A detective in California reached out to the Las Vegas detectives to let them know that, hey, just a few years earlier, Brookey Lee West was my prime suspect in her husband's murder.
After learning that Brookey West was connected to a previous homicide, Las Vegas investigators ask their counterparts in California to walk them through the details of that unsolved case.
On June 6, 1994, Tulare County Sheriff's Department received a 911 call from a tourist who was visiting the Sequoia National Forest. This individual, who was picnicking with his family, discovered the body of a male that was found on the side of the road.
Officers responded, and it was clear that this was a homicide, and there appeared to be a bag over the victim's face. They looked for any signs of a weapon and couldn't find anything.
There did not appear to be any foul play around the location.
They quickly concluded that the victim had been shot elsewhere and that this was actually a dump site. Fingerprints were taken from the deceased, and they soon found out that their victim was a man named Howard Simon St. John.
The body of Howard St. John was transported to the coroner's office for further analysis.
Authorities looked at the condition of the body, and they were able to determine that he had died relatively recently, within the last 12 to 24 hours.
Howard St. John had been shot multiple times in the back. Either he was running away in fear for his life, or he was completely shot by surprise.
They also uncovered an interesting clue, which was a .32 caliber bullet was lodged in his neck, and it appeared to be from a separate shooting. It did not appear to be related to his death. Howard had been shot in a separate incident, and he survived.
Based on the limited amount of healing from that earlier gunshot wound, the coroner believed it happened just a few weeks prior.
They learned that Howard had a significant record involving petty crimes, mostly involving alcohol abuse.
He was from a tough side of town in the San Jose Bay Area, San Francisco. He had been in and out of jail. And they also learned a very important fact, which was he was in a very tumultuous marriage with a woman by the name of Brookey West.
Investigators contacted Howard's family to learn more about his marriage and his life.
What they learned was that Howard Simon St. John was born in May 1958 to Sylvester and Catherine St. John in Redwood City, California. They traced him to a nearby Tulare County Indian reservation. He had a history there, grew up there, and wanted to explore his Native American roots. He'd been there for many years and had at one point a stable family life early on. But, over time, Howard struggled with alcohol and drugs and ended up homeless.
After several years struggling with addiction, Howard's friends got him into a shelter and he started Alcoholics Anonymous. He and Brookey met at one of the meetings in the spring of 1994.
Brookey West was attending these AA meetings not because she was an alcoholic, but she was actually bringing her elderly mom, Christine Smith, and she suddenly started eyeing Howard St. John.
She appeared to be well off, a well-dressed, beautiful woman who was very successful.
He showed up in t-shirts, unkempt clothing, did not seem to have any money, and those are two people that you would not have expected to see get together, but a relationship blossomed. Next thing you know, Howard St. John is telling everyone that he was moving into Brookey's home.
Within a matter of a month or two, they ended up going to Reno, eloping, and getting married in Nevada.
In this investigation that I received from the Tulare County Sheriff's Department, there was a notation about the first domestic violence that occurred about 2 weeks prior to Howard's death. On May 21st, about a month after they got married, there had been an altercation and domestic violence situation, and Brookey used a firearm to shoot at Howard. He was shot in the neck.
So on June 9th, 1994, investigators went to their home in California to question her about his death.
You have a prior domestic dispute involving gun violence, and then a few weeks after that, Howard turns up dead. So it would be logical for the authorities to really scrutinize this relationship.
Coming up, an unsolved death sheds light on the current murder investigation.
I was surprised and kind of eerily seeing similarities.
And detectives try to bring a remorseless killer to justice.
This case was about greed, hatred, selfishness.
After Brookey Lee West emerged as the prime suspect in the investigation into her husband's murder, California investigators went to their home to question her. A woman answered the door, but it wasn't Brookey. It was her 62-year-old mother, Christine Smith.
When the authorities talked to Christine Smith, she had very negative things to say about Howard Simon St. John. She said that he was a bum, that he drank all the time, he didn't work, and that, frankly, her exact words were, he's as crazy as a bedbug.
Nobody understood his purpose in Brooke's life. He didn't appear to have any job because he would be at home whenever she was gone to work. In comparison to Brooke, he was a slob.
She said he had a long-term alcohol problem and had a history of being violent with Brooke.
In the process too, she started talking about the incident that happened 2 weeks prior.
She said that Brookey had accidentally put Howard's wallet and identification through the wash, and that they had been arguing about this, and that Howard was acting violently.
She reached for a gun and fired in self-defense.
It was a miracle that Howard even survived the gunshot. He had been shot in the neck at very close range.
Brookey was charged in the shooting incident, but the case was dismissed.
After the shooting, Howard told the authorities he didn't want her prosecuted. He wanted them to drop the charges. Against advice from his family, his friends, and everyone else, he quickly reunited with Brookey.
Christine told them she didn't know why Brookey decided to take Howard back after his recovery. Detectives were interested in asking Brookey the same question. And before the interview with Christine was over, they got their chance.
Suddenly, Brookey West came home. She was very charismatic and open and willing to talk to detectives.
Brookey Lee West told a very similar story to her mother, which was that she had shot him in self-defense. So those two accounts aligned with one another.
She kind of painted the picture that she had a very soft heart for him, that she loved him. She wanted to have that relationship succeed.
But according to Brookey, Howard seemed to have other plans.
After things had calmed down, Brookey worked that whole weekend before returning to Los Baños and learned that Howard was no longer there and had stolen $3,000 from her.
She said he had taken that money and gone with some associates to Reno and gambled that money away.
Brookey claimed she never saw her husband again. At the time, California investigators could not confirm her alibi, but without direct evidence of her involvement, they moved on to other possible suspects.
Howard had a record of having individuals that he wronged over his lifetime, and so they wanted to continue to see if there were any other potential persons of interest that they wanted to talk to.
They were very, very meticulous about this case. They assembled hundreds of interviews. They really did their homework, but the case just never came together.
That case file sat with the Tulare County Sheriff's Department for many months, going into years, as unsolved.
But 7 years later, Las Vegas detectives wonder if Brookey is responsible for the deaths of both her mother and her former husband.
Now, you've got two dead bodies of people that are closely associated with Brooke.
I was surprised and kind of eerily seeing similarities with what happened to Christine Smith and with what happened to Howard St. John.
Howard had a bag over his face, and so did Christine Smith. This was an undeniable pattern.
Now we have to look at Christine's death and find enough evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Brookey West killed her mom.
While there is no statute of limitations on murder, the evidence isn't strong enough to charge Brookey Lee West in connection to the murder of Howard St. John. Crime scene technicians combed through the storage unit looking for any other evidence to tie Brookey to Christine's murder.
They did a very extensive examination of the cellophane and duct tape around the garbage can.
To my amazement, the crime scene investigator was able to find and recover a fingerprint that was on the inside of the plastic cellophane wrapping.
When they did an analysis of that fingerprint, they found out that it was Brookey Lee West's print.
That was a pretty good indication to us that Brookey at least had some hand in sealing the trash can.
I think that one day Brookey just snapped and attacked her mother because she hated her. She hated all the childhood trauma that she had been put through. She'd never had stability in her life, and Christine was going to pay the price for it.
Brookey West is a diabolical individual. She didn't have a good relationship with her mom. She decided to kill her, and she was collecting those Social Security payments for about 2.5 years until she was discovered.
This case was about greed, hatred, and selfishness.
The fingerprint is a solid piece of evidence, but as Brookey's trial date approaches, prosecutors wonder if it will be enough to convict her.
Did I feel comfortable going to trial the way it is? Absolutely not. How do I prove to a jury that this was done by criminal means with criminal intent?
On July 3rd, 2001, 5 months after Christine Smith's body was discovered, her daughter, Brookey Lee West, stands trial for murder.
A lot of cases you've got a murder weapon. A lot of cases you might have a confession. They didn't have any of that with Brookey.
Could Brookey have just simply panicked and disposed of her mother's body but didn't kill her?
The defense presented the idea that the body may have had some natural disease that no longer is viewable, and I had to concede that that was possible.
But the prosecution argues that a crucial detail about the crime scene proves Brookey's claim to be false.
There would be no reason to put a bag over someone's face if you just panicked.
I have a theory about all that. It's based on the Satanic Bible. I read it in order to see if there was a connection. By placing something over their eyes, that person is damned forever to be stuck in their own demons.
They bolster their case with the expert testimony of a forensic entomologist.
You would expect that within minutes, if not within the hour, blowflies would have colonized the body. But we don't have the blowflies. That gave an indication that Brookey must have had the garbage can ready, the cellophane wrapping ready, and the duct tape ready. The lack of blowflies suddenly gave me the option to, based on science, to argue that this was premeditated.
The body most likely went into this can very shortly after it died, or possibly even when it was still alive.
On July 19, 2001, the jury delivers its verdict.
A jury took just 2 hours to convict Brookey Lee West of first-degree murder. Brookey Lee West was sentenced to life in prison without parole.
I absolutely feel that justice was served in this case. She did it, and she needs to suffer the consequences.
There are certain crimes that, are beyond the pale, and this was certainly one of them.
How can anybody do that? Especially your own daughter, murder her mother that way? Shocking, really, even now.
6 years after the verdict, Brookey's case is featured on the 5th season of Snapped. But her story doesn't end there.
Nearly 10 years after Brookey Lee West was convicted of murder, something unbelievable happened at the state prison where Brookey was serving her life sentence.
July 20th, 2012. Brookey Lee West has been incarcerated since 2001, when she was convicted of murdering her mother, Christine Smith.
So, Brookey's housed at Florence McClure Women's Facility in North Las Vegas. It's the prison for the state of Nevada for female prisoners. Brookey was by and large a model prisoner. She taught art classes, she was involved in pen pal groups, all kinds of things to try to be productive even though she was in prison. I think the structure of prison suited Brookey fairly well.
11 years after her conviction, it's Friday morning visiting day, and most inmates are preparing to see family members. But Brookey is occupied with something else.
Brookey had taken some art supplies and hid some art supplies. She managed to dye her hair, and she managed to store away some clothes from a guard.
She had changed her clothes and made her way all the way to the front entry of the prison and was on the verge of walking out.
She was able to get through multiple checkpoints and was just stopped at the last one. She almost made it, but she was arrested trying to walk out the front door of Florence McClure.
She's now housed in a maximum security facility. No, she's no longer in the Nevada Women's Correctional Facility. Brookey West is very crafty. She is cunning, sneaky, and I would not be surprised if she tries it again.
The story surrounding Brookey Lee West and her exploits have made her one of the most notorious killers in Las Vegas history. And while she remains in jail for the gruesome murder of her mother, authorities were never able to prove Brookey was responsible for the death of her husband.
She was a professional, high-income, attractive woman, a technical writer, someone that you would never ever think was capable of this type of violence. But behind the facade was a very dangerous human being. The people who were close to Brookey were traumatized beyond belief by this whole series of events, and they just cumulatively came to learn that they were in the presence of a predator.
Howard St. John was in the wrong place in the wrong time with the wrong person.
Christine was colorful, she was chaotic, she was troubled, she was friendly, she was funny. We should remember Christine as a victim, despite all her flaws.
I really felt bad for Christine. Really, the whole thing, you know. She never deserved that at all.
I love Christine. She was uniquely her, but everybody has good qualities and bad qualities, and I can accept them as they are. We all have good and bad in us. No one deserves to die at the hands of a murderer. No one.
The first snowfall arrived 3 weeks earlier than anyone expected. By the time dawn reached the narrow streets of Ashmore, Minnesota, every rooftop had disappeared beneath a blanket of white, so clean it looked untouched by the world. It was the kind of morning that swallowed sound. No birds, no traffic, only the slow whisper of wind carrying loose snow across empty roads. At 6:17 a.m., the phone rang inside the Ashmore Sheriff's Office. The caller never gave a name. Only one sentence. "You buried the wrong secret." Then silence. Deputy Martin Ellis replayed the recording 3 times before anyone spoke. The voice sounded calm.
Male.
Middle-aged. No panic. No anger. Just certainty. Within 20 minutes, patrol cars were heading toward Black Creek Road. The abandoned farmhouse had been empty for nearly 20 years. Everyone in town knew the place. Children dared each other to step onto the porch during Halloween. Hunters avoided the woods behind it. Teenagers claimed they heard footsteps echoing through the broken halls long after midnight. Nobody expected police tape to appear there before sunrise. The frozen ground should have made digging impossible. Yet someone had disturbed the earth behind the old barn only hours earlier. Fresh shovel marks, fresh footprints, fresh tire tracks, and beneath less than 2 feet of frozen soil, a single human hand, perfectly preserved by the cold. News traveled through Ashmore faster than the storm clouds gathering overhead. By lunchtime, every diner, grocery store, and gas station had stopped talking about football, weather, or crops. Everyone talked about the body. Everyone asked the same question. Who had been hiding beneath that field for 2 decades? The answer only created more questions. The victim carried no wallet, no jewelry, no identification. The clothing belonged to another era. Faded denim, heavy winter coat, leather boots manufactured sometime in the late 1990s. The medical examiner estimated the body had rested beneath the soil since around the winter of 2000. 25 years. 25 winters. 25 springs that covered the grave with fresh grass. 25 summers when children rode bicycles past the property without realizing someone lay only inches below their tires. Investigators searched every missing person report filed across Minnesota around the turn of the century. Hundreds of names. None matched. Then something impossible happened. The fingerprints did. Within 48 hours, the database produced a single result. Evan Mercer, age 28. construction worker, reported missing on January 14, 2000. The case had gone nowhere. Until now. According to archived reports, Mercer had left work shortly after sunset. He called his younger sister from a payphone outside a convenience store. He told her he was coming home. He never arrived. His pickup truck was discovered 3 days later near Lake Benton. Locked. Engine cold. The keys missing. No blood. No signs of struggle. Police believed he had walked away voluntarily. Some suggested gambling debts. Others whispered about drugs. A few believed he crossed into Canada. Eventually, detectives ran out of theories. Boxes filled with witness statements collected dust inside evidence storage. The file received a stamp every investigator hated reading. Cold case. The Mercer family never accepted it. His mother called detectives every January. Every single year. She never asked for miracles. Only one question. Has anyone remembered my son? The answer never changed. Until the body beneath Black Creek Road. Forensic teams returned to the farmhouse with ground-penetrating radar. The equipment revealed something even stranger. The grave wasn't alone. Several geometric disturbances surrounded the burial site. Too regular to be natural. Too shallow to ignore. Excavation began immediately. Reporters crowded behind barricades. Television helicopters circled overhead despite the snow. Ashmore had never attracted national attention before. Now, every major network wanted answers. By the end of the second day, investigators uncovered old wooden planks arranged beneath the frozen earth. Not coffins. Not tunnels. A collapsed root cellar. Inside, detectives found rusted tools. Broken bottles. Fragments of newspapers dated December 1999. And one object that stopped everyone in the room. A disposable camera. Its plastic shell had survived remarkably well underground. The film inside had not. Technicians spent weeks attempting to recover the damaged negatives. Most images dissolved into gray shadows. Others revealed little more than blurred lights. Then one frame emerged. Not perfect. Not clear. But enough. For people stood outside the farmhouse. 3 faces remained impossible to identify. The fourth looked directly toward the camera. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't posing. He looked frightened. As though whoever held the camera wasn't supposed to be taking photographs. Detectives enlarged the image. Sharpened it. Compared it against old driver's licenses. Nothing. The face existed. Yet nobody seemed to know who it belonged to. Meanwhile, another discovery shook the investigation. The boots recovered from Evan Mercer's body contained traces of industrial blue paint. The same specialized coating used inside the now-demolished North River manufacturing plant. Mercer had never worked there. Neither had any member of his family. So why had he been inside that building shortly before his death? Former employees returned for questioning. Most barely remembered the winter of 2000. Others remembered too much. Several admitted strange deliveries arrived after midnight. Unmarked trucks. No company logos. Always escorted. Always unloaded in silence. Security cameras supposedly malfunctioned during every delivery. Payroll records showed workers received unexpected bonuses whenever those shipments occurred. Nobody could explain why. Then came another surprise. One retired security guard vanished 2 days before detectives planned to interview him. His house stood untouched. Coffee still sat inside the kitchen. Television still played. His wallet remained on the table. His truck stayed parked outside. He simply disappeared. Ashmore began changing. People locked doors they hadn't locked in years. Parents stopped letting children walk to school alone. Old rumors resurfaced. Stories dismissed as gossip suddenly sounded possible. Some residents insisted powerful people had controlled the town for decades. Others believed Mercer had stumbled upon something nobody was supposed to see. Social media transformed speculation into certainty. Conspiracy theories spread by the hour. Former classmates gave interviews. Neighbors claimed they remembered unfamiliar vehicles cruising empty roads during the winter of 2000. A waitress recalled serving 4 nervous men the night Mercer vanished. An elderly mechanic swore someone paid cash to repair a mud-covered pickup before dawn. Every memory seemed important. Every story contradicted another. Truth disappeared beneath layers of fear. Then detectives received another anonymous phone call. The same calm voice. The same measured breathing. This time the caller spoke 5 words. "You're still digging too shallow." The line disconnected. Within hours, investigators expanded the excavation beyond the farmhouse. What they found next would force every detective assigned to the case to reconsider everything they believed about Evan Mercer, the forgotten winter of 2000, and the secret that had remained frozen beneath the snow for a quarter of a century. The snow had stopped falling, but the silence around Black Creek Road felt heavier than the storm itself. For 25 years, Ashmore had carried the memory of Evan Mercer as an unanswered question. A photograph on a missing person bulletin. A name printed on an aging file folder. A story people mentioned quietly before changing the subject. But now, Evan Mercer was no longer just missing. He was evidence. And the ground beneath the abandoned farmhouse was beginning to reveal that his disappearance was never a simple case of someone walking away. The morning after the anonymous warning, investigators returned before sunrise. No reporters. No cameras. No crowds. Only a small group of detectives, forensic specialists, and officers standing behind yellow tape as the first rays of light touched the frozen field. The phrase from the mysterious caller remained in everyone's mind. "You're still digging too shallow." Detective Laura Vance hated those words. Not because they sounded threatening, because they sounded like someone watching. Someone who knew exactly what police would find before they found it. The excavation continued 30 yards beyond Evan Mercer's burial site. At first, nothing appeared. Only frozen dirt. Roots. Stones. Years of untouched ground. Then, just after 9:40 a.m., one of the forensic technicians stopped moving. His shovel had struck something that didn't belong. A metallic sound. A hollow echo beneath the soil. Everyone gathered around. Slowly, carefully, they removed the frozen earth. And, beneath it, a steel container. Not a modern storage box. An old industrial case covered in rust. The kind used decades earlier to transport equipment. But inside that container was not machinery. It was a collection of objects that turned a missing person investigation into something far darker. Photographs. Handwritten notes. A damaged tape recorder. And a small black notebook. The notebook belonged to Evan Mercer. His handwriting was immediately confirmed by his family. The last pages were filled with dates, names, locations, and one sentence written over and over again. "They know I'm looking." Investigators spent the next 12 hours examining every page. The first entries seemed ordinary. Notes about construction jobs, payments, work schedules, names of contractors. Then the writing changed. The tone became urgent. Evan had been documenting something. Something connected to North River Manufacturing Plant, the abandoned factory that sat 8 miles outside Ashmore. According to his notes, Mercer discovered unusual activity while working a temporary maintenance job there in late 1999. The factory was officially closed. The company had filed for bankruptcy years earlier. But according to Evan's notebook, trucks continued arriving after midnight. No paperwork. No employee records. No official deliveries. He wrote about rooms inside the building that weren't listed on any blueprint. Storage areas hidden behind false walls. People who entered through locked doors and left before sunrise. At first, investigators believed Evan had discovered illegal activity. But the deeper they looked, the stranger the story became. One name appeared repeatedly throughout the notebook. Daniel Cross, former operations manager at North River Manufacturing. A man who had disappeared from public records shortly after the factory closed. Cross was never reported missing. He simply vanished. No forwarding address. No employment history after 2001. No digital footprint. Almost as if someone had erased him. Detectives searched databases. Nothing. They checked property records. Nothing. They contacted former coworkers. Most claimed they barely remembered him. But one former employee changed everything. His name was Robert Hale. He was 71 years old and living alone outside Duluth. When detectives showed him Daniel Cross's photograph, his reaction was immediate. He didn't ask who the man was. He didn't pretend confusion. He simply whispered, "How did you find that name?" That question told investigators everything. Hale agreed to speak, but only after checking every window and locking every door in his house. He told detectives that North River Manufacturing had not closed because of bankruptcy. That was the story the public was given. The real reason, according to Hale, was something nobody wanted exposed. The factory had been involved in a private research project. A project so secret that regular employees were forbidden from entering certain sections of the building. Workers who asked questions were removed. Workers who complained were suddenly transferred. And workers who threatened to report what they saw were warned. Hale said Evan Mercer wasn't searching for trouble. He was simply the wrong person in the wrong place. One night in December 1999, Mercer was repairing a damaged electrical system inside the factory. Behind a wall panel, he discovered documents that should not have existed. Names, payments, photographs, records connecting local officials, business owners, and unknown investors. Evan began copying information, taking pictures, building his own private investigation. Hale remembered seeing him carrying a camera. He remembered telling Evan to stop. Not because he didn't believe him, because he was afraid. The last time Hale saw Mercer alive was January 13, 2000. One day before he disappeared. Evan arrived at the factory after midnight. He looked exhausted, terrified. Hale said Mercer kept repeating the same thing. They know. They know I have it. They know what I found. The next morning, Evan was gone. Hale never spoke about it again. Not for 25 years. Until detectives arrived at his door. But Hale wasn't the only person who had stayed silent. The investigation quickly uncovered a pattern. Several former North River employees had disappeared from public life over the years. Not missing. Not dead. Just gone. A former accountant moved across the country and refused to explain why. A security supervisor destroyed old employment records. A maintenance worker changed his name. Individually, none of these events meant much. Together, they formed a disturbing picture. Someone had been cleaning up the past. The question was who? As detectives continued analyzing Evan's notebook, they found one final entry. The handwriting was rushed. The ink was darker, almost as if he wrote it while standing. January 14, 2000. The day he disappeared. Only one sentence remained. If anything happens to me, check beneath the place where the river remembers. Investigators immediately searched old maps of Ashmore. There was only one location matching the description. A forgotten section of the riverbank behind North River Manufacturing Plant. A place locals avoided because the ground was unstable. A place hidden from the main roads. A place where nobody had searched in 25 years. By midnight, detectives were preparing to return. But before they could leave headquarters, another piece of evidence arrived. A package, delivered anonymously. No fingerprints. No return address. Inside was a single photograph, freshly printed. Not from 2000. Not from the old farmhouse. From that very night. The image showed the investigators standing beside Evan Mercer's grave. Taken from a distance. Taken after police secured the scene. Someone had been watching. Someone had been close enough to see everything. On the back of the photograph were 6 words written in black ink. You should have left him buried. For the first time in 25 years, Ashmore was no longer asking what happened to Evan Mercer. The town was asking a more terrifying question. Who had spent all this time making sure nobody ever found out? The photograph sat inside an evidence bag beneath the harsh white lights of the Ashmore Sheriff's Office. Nobody touched it without gloves. Nobody spoke while looking at it, because the message written on the back was no longer a warning. It was a declaration. Someone had been following the investigation from the beginning. Someone had watched officers uncover Evan Mercer's grave. Someone had stood somewhere in the darkness, close enough to capture the moment, then walked away without being seen. For Detective Laura Vance, the photograph changed the entire case. A cold case was supposed to be about the past. Old evidence. Old memories. Old mistakes. But this was different. The person responsible was not trapped in history. They were still there. Still watching. Still moving. The investigation immediately shifted from a 25-year-old disappearance to an active threat. Officers reviewed every camera near Black Creek Road. Every road. Every intersection. Every business within 5 miles. They expected to find something. A vehicle. A face. A shadow moving through the snow. Instead, they found nothing. No license plates. No unusual activity. No unidentified cars. It was as if the person who took the photograph had disappeared into the winter air. But one detail caught the attention of investigators. The image was not taken from the road. The angle was wrong. Too high. Too distant. The photographer had been standing somewhere elevated. Detectives returned to the farmhouse and searched the surrounding area again. This time, they looked differently. Not for a grave. Not for evidence left behind. They searched for a place where someone could hide. Behind the property stood an abandoned grain tower, a rusted structure that had not been used since the early 1990s. Inside, investigators discovered footprints. Fresh ones. The snow had covered most of the tracks, but beneath the tower they found a small area where someone had been sitting. A discarded coffee cup, a cigarette filter, and a piece of fabric caught on a broken metal edge. The person watching them had been there recently. Maybe minutes before officers arrived. Maybe hours. The realization sent a wave of fear through the department. Whoever they were chasing wasn't just connected to the past. They were connected to the present. The fabric recovered from the tower was sent to the laboratory. The results came back 3 days later. Synthetic material. Industrial grade. The same type of fabric used in protective uniforms at North River Manufacturing Plant. Another connection. Another piece of a puzzle that seemed designed to reveal itself one terrifying piece at a time. Meanwhile, detectives traveled to the riverbank mentioned in Evan Mercer's notebook. The place where the river remembers. The location was nearly forgotten. A narrow stretch of land hidden behind overgrown trees and abandoned service roads. The river had changed over 25 years. The shoreline had shifted. Trees had fallen. The old factory was nothing more than a skeleton of concrete and twisted steel. But beneath the frozen ground, investigators discovered something unexpected. A buried metal door, covered by dirt and vegetation. Locked. The door did not appear on any property records. It was not listed on old construction plans. It was a secret entrance, the kind of discovery that turns suspicion into certainty. Inside was a small underground room. The air smelled of rust and damp concrete. The walls were covered with old electrical wiring. Dust covered everything, except one object. A wooden chair, placed in the center of the room. Waiting. On the chair sat a recorder, exactly like the one found inside Evan Mercer's hidden container. Detectives carefully removed it. The battery was dead. The tape inside was damaged. But forensic specialists believed they could recover audio. For the first time in decades, Evan Mercer's final hours might finally have a voice. The entire town waited. People who had forgotten the case suddenly remembered every detail. The bartender who served Evan his last drink. The neighbor who saw his truck. The mechanic who noticed mud on his tires. Everyone wanted to know. Everyone wanted answers. But answers often create more fear than silence. The recovered audio was played in a private evidence room. At first, there was only static, a low electrical hum, then footsteps, a door opening, a man's breathing, and finally, Evan Mercer. His voice was weak, whispering, "If anyone finds this." A pause. A sound in the background. Someone else was there. Evan continued, "I was right." The recording became distorted. Investigators leaned closer. The next words were almost impossible to hear. But the audio experts cleaned the recording, removed the interference, raised the volume. Then the sentence became clear. They didn't close the factory. Silence filled the room. The recording continued. They moved everything underground. A sudden crash. A voice in the background. Male. Angry. Evans stopped speaking. The tape captured only fragments. A struggle. A heavy object falling. Someone shouting. Then a final sound. A single sentence. Spoken by someone investigators had never heard before. You should have listened. Then nothing. The tape ended. For the first time, detectives had proof. Evan Mercer had not disappeared. He had been taken. But the most disturbing part came after. The voice analysis team compared the unknown speaker against available records. The results were inconclusive. No match. No identity. No explanation. Then Detective Vance noticed something buried in the audio. A background sound. A repeating noise. A mechanical rhythm. She recognized it immediately. The same sound appeared in old security footage from North River Manufacturing Plant. A machine. Still operating. Years after the factory was supposedly closed. That discovery reopened everything. Investigators searched corporate records. They found payments continuing long after North River officially shut down. Anonymous investors. Private contractors. Hidden accounts. Millions of dollars moving through companies that no longer appeared to exist. The factory had not died. It had simply disappeared from public view. And Evan Mercer had found the evidence. But one question remained. Why was he buried at the farmhouse instead of the factory? Why move his body miles away? Why hide him there? The answer came from a witness who had never spoken before. A woman named Claire Holloway. She was 76 years old and had lived near Black Creek Road since 1985. When detectives showed her Evan's photograph, she immediately recognized him. But she also recognized something else. The farmhouse. She revealed that on the night Evan vanished, she saw headlights near the property. 3 vehicles. 1 truck. 2 black sedans. She remembered because they arrived during a snowstorm. And because one person stepped out. A man wearing a dark uniform. A man carrying something heavy. Claire had spent 25 years believing she imagined it. Until Evan Mercer was found. Then came the detail that made investigators freeze. Claire remembered the man's face. She described him. Detectives created a composite image. Then they compared it against historical records. The result was impossible. The man Claire described was someone who had died 15 years earlier. A former North River executive. Someone who was officially buried in another state. Someone who should not have been anywhere near Ashmore in 2000. The case had just taken another impossible turn. A dead man. A hidden operation. A missing witness. And a killer who seemed determined to protect a secret that had survived for decades. But as investigators dug deeper into North River's hidden history, they discovered that Evan Mercer was not the only person who had tried to expose what happened beneath the abandoned factory. Years earlier, another person had asked the same questions. And that person had vanished without a trace. The name on the old file had been crossed out 3 times. Not erased. Not destroyed. Crossed out. As if someone wanted the record to exist, but wanted the truth hidden beneath layers of ink. The file belonged to another disappearance. Another person who had looked too closely at North River Manufacturing. Her name was Rachel Bennett. 29 years old. Investigative journalist. Last seen in Ashmore on March 8, 1998. 2 years before Evan Mercer vanished. For decades, Rachel Bennett's disappearance had been treated as a completely separate mystery. A young reporter chasing a story. A woman who walked away from a promising career. A missing person case that slowly faded into the background as years passed. But now, with Evan Mercer's notebook open on the evidence table, detectives saw the connection. Rachel had been investigating the same thing. The same factory. The same midnight deliveries. The same hidden operation. The same names. Detective Laura Vance stared at the documents spread across the room. 2 people. 2 years apart. Both searching for answers. Both disappearing. both connected to North River. The question was no longer whether Evan Mercer had uncovered a secret. The question was how many people had disappeared trying to uncover it. Investigators reopened Rachel Bennett's file immediately. Inside were dozens of newspaper clippings, interview transcripts, handwritten notes, and one photograph. A picture of North River Manufacturing taken from a distance. The same angle, the same hidden entrance, the same underground access point where detectives had discovered the recorder. Rachel had found it first. Her final article draft was stored on an old computer recovered from her apartment. Most of the files were corrupted, but one document survived. It had no title, no publication date, only 3 words at the top. The Ashmore Project. The article described a secret program operating beneath North River Manufacturing. Rachel wrote about illegal experiments, unauthorized financial transfers, and a group of investors who had purchased abandoned industrial properties across the Midwest. But the most disturbing part was the final paragraph. Rachel wrote, "Someone inside the project knows I have the documents. They are not trying to stop the story. They are trying to erase me." The article ended there. No conclusion, no signature, no explanation. Just an unfinished investigation frozen in time. Forensic teams examined Rachel's computer again. They discovered something hidden in the system files. A deleted audio recording, time-stamped 2 days before her disappearance. The recording was short, only 47 seconds. Rachel's voice was quiet. She sounded nervous. "If anyone hears this, don't trust the official records." A pause. A sound of movement. Then, "The people listed as dead are not all dead." The recording ended. Detectives replayed the sentence repeatedly. "The people listed as dead are not all dead." It sounded impossible, until they checked the records. North River's former executives, employees, contractors. Several names appeared in archived documents as deceased. But the deaths had never been deeply investigated. Most were old. Most occurred outside Minnesota. Most were considered unrelated. Until now, a pattern began forming. People connected to North River disappeared. Then, years later, records appeared showing they had died somewhere else. Different states, different circumstances, different causes, but the same result. No one asked questions. No one looked deeper. The investigation expanded. Detectives contacted hospitals, funeral homes, government archives. What they found created a new wave of fear. Several death certificates contained inconsistencies, wrong addresses, missing signatures, incorrect dates, small mistakes, the kind nobody notices unless they are searching for them. And now someone was searching. The town of Ashmore became a place where every old story suddenly mattered. The retired police officer who had handled Evan Mercer's missing person case agreed to speak. His name was Thomas Reed. He was 82 years old. His memory was fading. But when Detective Vance placed Evan's file on the table, something changed. Reed became silent. Then he said something nobody expected. "I knew he didn't leave." The room went still. Detective Vance asked why. Reed looked down. Because he had never admitted it. Not publicly. Not privately. Not even to his own family. 25 years earlier, when Evan's truck was found near Lake Benton, Reed noticed something unusual. The driver's seat position. The radio settings. The fuel level. Everything suggested Evan had not driven the truck there himself. Someone else had moved it. Reed reported his suspicion. But his supervisor rejected it. He was told to close the theory. He was told there was no evidence. He was told the case needed to move on. Then Reed revealed something even darker. The night after he filed that report, someone broke into his office. Nothing valuable was taken. No computers. No cash. Only one thing disappeared. His handwritten notes about Evan Mercer. For 25 years, Reed carried the guilt of knowing he had missed something. Knowing he should have pushed harder. Knowing someone had wanted the case forgotten. Before detectives left, Reed handed them a small envelope. Inside was a photograph. Old. Faded. Taken outside North River Manufacturing. The date was written on the back. January 13th, 2000. The night before Evan disappeared. The photograph showed several people standing near the factory entrance. One of them was Evan. Another was Daniel Cross. But there was a third person. A person Reed had never identified. A person standing partially hidden in the shadows. Detectives enhanced the image. The face slowly became visible. And everyone in the room recognized him. It was Robert Hale, the former North River employee who had claimed he barely remembered Daniel Cross. The same man who had told detectives he was only a frightened witness. The same man who claimed he had warned Evan to stop investigating. But the photograph showed something different. Robert Hale was not watching Evan from a distance. He was standing beside him,
talking to him,
working with him. The man who had appeared to reveal the truth was now connected to the secret. Detectives immediately returned to Hale's home. But he was gone. His house was empty. No signs of struggle. No note. No explanation. Just like the others. However, this time there was one difference. Someone had left something behind. On Hale's kitchen table sat a small envelope. Inside was a single piece of paper. 5 words. Written in the same handwriting as the warning left at Evan Mercer's grave. The first witness lied. Investigators searched every room. They found one more clue. A hidden compartment beneath the floorboards. Inside was a collection of documents Robert Hale had kept for 25 years. Contracts, photographs, names, and one final piece of evidence. A handwritten map. The map showed every location connected to North River Manufacturing. The farmhouse, the factory, the riverbank, and a fourth location nobody had mentioned before. A place buried deep in the Minnesota woods. A place labeled with one word. Archive. As detectives examined the map, one realization became impossible to ignore. The farmhouse was not where the secret began. The factory was not where it ended. Evan Mercer had been searching for something much bigger. Rachel Bennett had discovered it before him. Robert Hale had hidden it afterward. And somewhere in the wilderness outside Ashmore, there was still a place where the evidence had been waiting. A place that someone had protected for 25 years. A place that might finally reveal who ordered Evan Mercer's disappearance. But before investigators could reach the location marked Archive, they received another message. This time it wasn't a phone call. It wasn't a photograph. It wasn't a warning. It was a confession. A handwritten letter delivered directly to the sheriff's office. The first sentence contained a name nobody expected to see. And the final sentence contained a promise. The letter arrived at 4:12 a.m.
No footsteps.
No vehicle.
No camera footy.
Just a plain white envelope placed beneath the front doors of the Ashmore Sheriff's Office, while the entire building was under heightened security. That detail bothered Detective Laura Vance more than anything else. After everything that had happened after the threats, the hidden graves, the missing witnesses, the anonymous photographs, someone had still managed to walk directly to the center of the investigation and leave a message behind. Whoever was controlling the investigation was not afraid of the police. They wanted the police to know they were there. Inside the envelope was a single sheet of paper. No fingerprints. No DNA.
No identifying marks.
Only handwriting. The same handwriting investigators had seen before. The warning at Evan Mercer's grave. The message on the photograph. The note left behind at Robert Hale's abandoned home. But this time, the words were different. This time, there was no threat. There was an admission. The letter began with one sentence. My name is Daniel Cross. For several seconds, nobody in the room spoke. The name belonged to a man who had been dead for 15 years. The former operations manager of North River Manufacturing. The man connected to everything. The man whose disappearance had created another mystery inside the mystery. Detective Vance read the letter slowly. Every sentence created another question. Daniel Cross claimed he had not died. He claimed the official records were false. He claimed someone had created a fake death certificate to remove him from the public eye. And most disturbing of all, he claimed Evan Mercer was never supposed to disappear. The letter continued. Evan found something he was never meant to see. But he was not the first. He was only the last person brave enough to keep looking. Investigators immediately compared the handwriting. The results were unclear. The writing style appeared consistent with documents attributed to Daniel Cross from the late 1990s. But there was a problem. If Daniel Cross was alive, where had he been? And why reveal himself now? The investigation moved faster than ever. The location marked archive became the new priority. A forgotten piece of land deep inside the northern Minnesota woods. According to Robert Hale's map, the location had once been connected to North River through a private transportation route. A place never listed on company documents. A place that officially did not exist. Detectives traveled there before sunrise. The journey took nearly 4 hours. The roads became narrower. The forests became denser. Cell signals disappeared. The further they went, the more isolated they became. It felt less like searching for evidence. It felt like entering a place someone wanted forgotten. The coordinates led them to an abandoned logging area. There was nothing visible. No buildings. No signs. No roads. Only trees. But when investigators examined the ground, they found something unusual. A line of concrete beneath the moss. A hidden foundation. The remains of a structure buried by time. The archive. The entrance was underground. A steel door covered by decades of rust. Unlike the hidden room beneath North River Manufacturing, this door had no lock. It was already open. Someone had been there recently. Inside was a narrow hallway. The walls were reinforced. The design suggested the facility had been built to survive. Not for storage. For protection. The deeper investigators went, the more they discovered. Rows of metal shelves. Boxes filled with documents. Old hard drives. Photographs. Financial records. Thousands of pages documenting years of secret operations. The archive was not a hiding place. It was a record. A record of everything. For the first time, investigators saw the true scale of what Evan Mercer had uncovered. North River Manufacturing was only one piece. The operation extended across multiple states. Different companies. Different names. Same people. The documents revealed a network of private contractors and investors who had used abandoned industrial facilities as cover for illegal activities. Payments were made through fake companies. Records were altered. Employees were pressured into silence. And whenever someone became a problem, their connection disappeared. But then detectives found something unexpected. A file labeled Mercer Evan. Inside was information that had never been made public. Photographs. Surveillance reports. Personal notes. Someone had been watching Evan months before he disappeared. They knew where he worked, where he lived, who he talked to, what he discovered. The file contained one final page. A handwritten instruction. Transfer to secondary location. Dated January 13th, 2000. The night before Evan vanished. Detective Vance stared at the document. Someone had planned his disappearance. But someone else had interrupted the plan. Because another note was attached beneath it. Written in a different handwriting. Do not proceed. He knows too much. The investigators now had two unknown people involved. One who wanted Evan removed. Another who stopped the original plan. The question became even more complicated. Who was the person trying to protect Evan?
And why?
Among the documents, forensic teams discovered a small audio cassette labeled with a date. March 8, 1998. The day Rachel Bennett disappeared. The room became silent. Everyone knew what this meant. Rachel's final moments might have been recorded. The cassette was transferred to digital format. At first, only static played. Then Rachel's voice appeared. She sounded calm, focused, like a reporter preparing an interview. I found the connection. A pause. The missing people. The fake deaths. The money transfers. It's all connected. A door closed somewhere nearby. Rachel continued. Someone inside the organization is helping me. The recording became distorted. A second voice appeared.
A man. Low.
Quiet. Rachel asked, "Are you sure this is enough to expose them?" The man answered, It's enough to bring them down. Then Rachel said something that changed everything. What about Evan? The recording stopped. Investigators replayed the final seconds. Rachel knew Evan Mercer. Before he disappeared. Years before anyone knew there was a connection. The two cases were never separate. They were always part of the same story. But the biggest revelation came from the voice on the tape. Experts cleaned the audio, enhanced the recording, compared the voice against known samples. The result shocked everyone. The voice belonged to Robert Hale, the man who claimed he was only a frightened witness, the man who disappeared, the man who had hidden the map. He was not just a witness. He had been involved from the beginning. But before detectives could locate him, another discovery was made inside the archive. A security recording. One camera. One file. One date. January 14th, 2000. The night Evan Mercer vanished. The footage showed a vehicle arriving at the archive location. A truck. A man stepping out.
Carrying something.
The image quality was poor. The face was hidden. But the timestamp was clear. Someone had brought Evan Mercer there. Not to the farmhouse. Not to the factory. To the archive. And the person walking beside him was alive. Was moving. Was clearly visible. Then the video froze. The final frame showed the person's face. Detectives stared at the screen. Because they knew him. Everyone in Ashmore knew him. He was not a stranger. He was not a forgotten employee. He was someone who had spent the last 25 years living openly in the community. Someone who had attended town meetings. Someone who had spoken publicly about Evan Mercer's disappearance. Someone who had demanded justice. The man in the video was the last person anyone expected. And when Detective Vance spoke his name, the entire room went silent. Because the person who knew what happened to Evan Mercer had been standing among them all along. The frozen image remained on the monitor for nearly a minute. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Because sometimes the most terrifying discoveries are not hidden in darkness. Sometimes they are standing in plain sight. The man captured in the final frame of the archive recording was not a ghost from the past. He was not a forgotten employee. He was not a stranger buried inside an old investigation file. He was a respected figure in Ashmore. A man whose name appeared in newspapers. A man who had spoken at community events. A man who had looked directly into cameras for 25 years and claimed he wanted answers. His name was Sheriff Andrew Caldwell. The same sheriff who had overseen the department when Evan Mercer disappeared. The same sheriff who had publicly stated in 2000 that there was no evidence of foul play. The same man who had told Evan's family to accept that their son was probably gone by choice. Now investigators were staring at footage showing him entering the secret archive with Evan Mercer on the night of his disappearance. The room felt smaller. The air felt heavier. Because the person who had controlled the investigation for years was suddenly part of it. Detective Laura Vance watched the video again. Frame by frame. The quality was poor. The lighting was terrible. But the details were undeniable. The height. The posture. The movement. The face. Andrew Caldwell. There was no mistake. The first call went to Caldwell's office. No answer. The second call went to his home. No answer. The third call went directly to his personal phone. A voicemail picked up. Detective Vance left only one message. Andrew, we need to talk about January 14th, 2000. 3 minutes later, the phone was turned off. By sunrise, the entire town knew something had happened. Rumors moved faster than official statements. People who had trusted Caldwell for decades suddenly questioned everything. The sheriff who promised justice. The sheriff who said the case had no direction. The sheriff who told families to stop searching. Was he the person who made sure the truth stayed buried? But before investigators could confront him, they found something even more disturbing. The archive contained a second file. A file labeled Authorization. Inside were dozens of documents signed by different officials. Approvals. Payments. Transfer orders. But one signature appeared more than any other. Andrew Caldwell. At the time, Caldwell was not sheriff. He was a deputy assigned to investigations. a young officer with a reputation for ambition. According to the documents, Caldwell had worked closely with North River executives during the final months before the factory officially closed.
He was not investigating them.
He was communicating with them. The discovery changed the entire timeline. Caldwell did not become connected to North River after Evan disappeared. He was already connected before Evan vanished. Investigators began rebuilding the final days of January 2000. Every hour, every phone call, every movement. They discovered something hidden inside old police records. A missing page. The original report from the night Evan disappeared was incomplete. The official version said officers received no unusual calls, no suspicious activity, no witnesses. But the archived dispatch logs told a different story. At 11:48 p.m., a call was received from a private number. The caller reported seeing Evan Mercer near North River Manufacturing. The call lasted 37 seconds. Then it disappeared from the official case file. The dispatcher who answered that call was still alive. Her name was Melissa Grant. She agreed to meet investigators. When Detective Vance placed the old recording in front of her, Melissa immediately recognized her own voice. She listened quietly. Then tears filled her eyes. "I remember this." She admitted she had reported the call. She remembered the caller sounded frightened. She remembered the person on the other end said Evan was not alone. There was another vehicle, a government-style SUV, and someone wearing a police uniform. The recording ended before the caller gave a name. But Melissa remembered one detail. The caller asked for one specific person. "Tell Sheriff Caldwell." At the time, nobody questioned it. Caldwell was the lead officer. He was the person everyone trusted. Melissa said she assumed he handled it. Now she realized something terrifying. Maybe he did. Maybe he handled it exactly the way he wanted. The investigation into Caldwell became official. But finding him was the problem. His house was empty. His office was abandoned. His vehicle was missing. The man who had spent 25 years searching for Evan Mercer had vanished the moment the truth reached him. But Caldwell left something behind. A personal journal, hidden inside a locked drawer at his office. The first pages contained normal police notes, training, promotions, daily reports. Then the entries changed. The handwriting became darker, more emotional. It became clear Caldwell had been fighting something inside himself for years. One entry dated March 2000 stood out. "I thought removing the evidence would end it. I thought time would bury everything." Another entry. "Mercer was never supposed to survive the night." Another. "I have spent years protecting the wrong people." Detectives read the pages carefully. Caldwell was not the mastermind. He was something else. A participant. A person who made a decision 25 years earlier and spent the rest of his life trying to live with it. But one question remained. If Caldwell was involved, why had he spent decades keeping Evan's case alive? Why had he pushed for new searches? Why had he publicly demanded answers? The final pages of the journal revealed why. Caldwell had not been trying to solve the case. He had been trying to control it. He wanted to know what evidence remained. Who else knew? Who else was talking? He wasn't searching for the truth. He was searching for threats. Then investigators found the final entry, written only 3 days before the archive was discovered. The ink was fresh. They found the archive. A pause. They know about Mercer. Another pause. "I was never the only one involved." Then the final sentence. "If they come for me, they will come for everyone." The words changed everything. Because Caldwell was gone. But someone else was still watching. Someone else still had power. Someone else had been hiding behind the investigation for 25 years. That same night, detectives received a call from a block number. The voice was familiar.
Calm.
Controlled. The same voice from the grave warning. The same voice from the photograph. But this time, the caller did not threaten them. He gave them a location. A place hidden inside the old North River property. A place investigators had searched before. A place they believed was empty. The caller said only one sentence. "Caldwell was the lock. But you still haven't found the key." Then the line went dead. Minutes later, officers arrived at the location. Beneath the abandoned factory floor, they discovered a sealed room that did not appear on any blueprint. Inside was a single chair, a table, and a wall covered with photographs. Every person connected to the case: Evan Mercer, Rachel Bennett, Robert Hale, Andrew Caldwell, and dozens of others. People who had disappeared, people who had stayed silent, people who had died. At the center of the wall was one final photograph, a picture taken only days earlier, a picture of Detective Laura Vance herself. Someone had been documenting the investigation from the beginning. Someone knew every move police made. Someone had been waiting for them to discover the room. And beneath the photograph was a handwritten message. 3 words: "You're almost ready." For the first time, investigators understood the terrifying reality. The cold case was never abandoned. It was never forgotten. Someone had been watching it, maintaining it, controlling it, waiting for the right moment. And now, after 25 years of silence, the person who knew the entire truth was finally preparing to step out of the shadows. The name on the document changed everything. For 25 years, investigators had searched for a killer, a mastermind, a person responsible for making Evan Mercer disappear. But the name written on that transfer record belonged to someone who was supposed to be impossible to find. Someone who was supposed to have been gone before Evan ever vanished. The document listed Michael Voss, former North River Security Director, officially deceased. Date of death: October 3, 1999. 3 months before Evan Mercer disappeared. The file should have been meaningless. A dead man could not move a prisoner. A dead man could not authorize transfers. A dead man could not sign documents. Yet there it was. A record showing Michael Voss had personally approved Evan Mercer's relocation on January 15, 2000. The impossible name at the center of the investigation. Detective Laura Vance immediately requested every record connected to Michael Voss. The answer came back within hours. His death certificate existed. His funeral records existed. Even a newspaper obituary existed. But when investigators looked deeper, they found the cracks. The funeral home listed no family members. The cemetery record contained no photograph. The death certificate had been signed by a doctor who had retired shortly afterward. And the official cause of death was vague. Natural complications. No detailed medical explanation. No hospital records. No autopsy. A death with all the paperwork, but none of the proof. The deeper investigators searched, the clearer one possibility became. Michael Voss may never have died. He may have disappeared, just like everyone else. The pattern was becoming impossible to ignore. People connected to North River did not simply leave. They were erased. Their identities were buried. Their histories rewritten. Their deaths manufactured. And Evan Mercer had discovered the system before anyone else understood it existed. The question now was simple. Who was Michael Voss really? And why had he been responsible for Evan after the disappearance? Investigators returned to the archive. They searched every document connected to Voss. Most of his files were incomplete. Employment history, military records, financial documents. Everything contained gaps. But one photograph survived. A company event from 1996. North River executives standing beside a group of employees. At the far edge of the image stood Michael Voss. Behind him was another man, partially hidden, almost impossible to notice. Detective Vance enlarged the image. The man's face slowly became clearer. She recognized him immediately. Daniel Cross. But the timeline made no sense. Cross had claimed he was just an employee. The documents suggested he was much more. He and Voss were not separate players. They were connected long before Evan Mercer disappeared. The investigation revealed that North River had 2 layers. The public company, the one employees knew, the one that produced equipment and manufactured industrial products, and the hidden operation, the one controlled through private rooms, secret archives, and people who officially did not exist. Michael Voss appeared to be the person who managed security. But investigators discovered something darker. He managed information. He controlled who knew what. He decided what disappeared and what survived. Among the archive documents was a list of names. A list titled Exposure Risk. The names were ranked from low to critical. Evan Mercer was there. Rachel Bennett was there. But beneath them was another name. Robert Hale. The man who helped investigators discover the archive. The man who vanished. The man who claimed he was only a witness. His name was marked critical. Detectives realized they had misunderstood Hale. He was not simply a survivor. He was someone who had been involved so deeply that even the organization considered him dangerous. But why would he help expose everything? Why reveal the archive? Why give them the map? The answer came from a hidden video file recovered from one of the archive computers. The recording showed Robert Hale, older, tired, sitting alone in a dark room. The video was clearly recorded before his disappearance. He looked directly into the camera. I know what people will think.
He paused.
They will think I was part of it. His hands shook. Maybe I was. The room became silent as investigators watched. Hale continued. But I was not the person who decided who lived and who disappeared. He looked away. Michael Voss was. The video revealed a shocking confession. Hale had worked as a technician at North River. He discovered the hidden operations accidentally. At first, he ignored them. He was afraid. He had a family, a normal life. He convinced himself that someone else would stop it. But nobody did. Then Rachel Bennett arrived. She started asking questions. She found records. She found names. She found people willing to talk, including Hale. The video showed Hale admitting he gave Rachel information. He helped her investigate. But someone found out. And Rachel disappeared. Hale spent the next 2 years living with guilt. Then Evan Mercer discovered the same secrets. And Hale tried to stop history from repeating. He warned Evan. He begged him to walk away. But Evan refused. Because Evan believed the truth mattered more than his own safety. The video stopped. The final frame showed Hale writing something. A message. A warning. Investigators enhanced the image. The words became visible. The person who ordered everything is not Voss. Another line followed. Voss was protecting someone higher. Detectives froze. Michael Voss was not the top. Daniel Cross was not the top. Victor Lang was not the top. Andrew Caldwell was not the top. They were pieces, not the person controlling the board. The investigation entered a new phase. Every surviving North River connection was reviewed. Every financial transfer. Every company. Every hidden partnership. And one name appeared repeatedly. A name investigators had overlooked because it seemed impossible. Because the person had no reason to be involved. Because the person was considered a victim. Evan Mercer's own family had never been questioned deeply. Not because police ignored them. Because nobody believed they were connected. But the archive contained one document that changed everything. A payment record. A private transfer. Sent 2 days after Evan disappeared. The recipient was listed as Thomas Mercer, Evan's older brother. The person who had spent 25 years demanding justice. The person who appeared in every interview. The person who publicly blamed the system for failing Evan. The person everyone believed wanted the truth. Detective Vance stared at the document. The room went silent. Because the investigation had reached the one place nobody had thought to look. Inside Evan Mercer's own family. But before detectives could question Thomas Mercer, they received another message. Not from the unknown caller. Not from a hidden device. Not from an anonymous letter. This time, the message came directly from Thomas himself. He walked into the sheriff's office alone, placed a small envelope on the table, and said 5 words. I know where Evan died. Inside the envelope was a photograph. The same farmhouse. The same field. The same location where Evan's body had been discovered. But the date on the photograph was impossible. It was taken 24 years earlier. The day after Evan disappeared. And standing beside the freshly disturbed ground was Thomas Mercer, holding a shovel, looking directly at the camera. The photograph sat on the evidence table for nearly 10 minutes before anyone spoke. Because there are moments in an investigation when the truth does not arrive like an explosion. It arrives quietly. A single image, a single detail, a single impossible fact that destroys everything investigators believed. Thomas Mercer, Evan Mercer's older brother. The man who spent 25 years asking for justice. The man who appeared at every anniversary. The man who stood beside Evan's grieving mother and promised he would never stop searching. Now he was standing in a photograph taken one day after Evan disappeared. Standing beside the farmhouse. Holding a shovel. Near freshly disturbed ground. The same ground where Evan's remains would be discovered 25 years later. Detective Laura Vance looked at Thomas sitting across from her. His expression had not changed. No panic. No anger. No attempt to leave. Only exhaustion. Like someone who had been carrying a secret for too long. You knew, Detective Vance said. Thomas looked down. I knew something. Something? His silence answered before his words did. I knew Evan wasn't coming home. The room became still. The confession did not explain everything. It created more questions. Why was Thomas at the farmhouse? Why did he have a shovel? Why did he keep searching publicly if he already knew the truth? And why had someone photographed him? Thomas pushed the envelope toward Detective Vance. Inside was not only the photograph. There was another document. A handwritten statement. 25 years old. Written by Evan Mercer. The handwriting matched the notebook found in the archive. But the content was different. This was not an investigation.
It was a goodbye.
The letter began. Tom, if you are reading this, then something went wrong. Thomas closed his eyes when he heard those words read aloud. He had never shown anyone the letter. Not police. Not family. Nobody. According to Thomas, Evan gave it to him 2 days before he disappeared. Not because he expected to die. Because he believed something might happen. Evan had discovered the North River operation. He knew people were watching him. He knew powerful people wanted the evidence destroyed. But he also believed one person inside the organization was trying to help him. Someone who had access. Someone who understood the system. Someone who wanted everything exposed. That person was Daniel Cross. For years, investigators believed Cross was one of the villains. But the evidence suggested something more complicated. Cross had been part of North River's inner circle. He knew the secrets.
He knew the people involved.
And eventually he turned against them. Evan trusted him. Thomas said that was the reason Evan disappeared. Not because he found the secret. Because he found someone willing to reveal it. The night Evan vanished, Thomas received a call. Evan told him to go to the farmhouse. He told him to bring a shovel. But he warned him not to contact police. Not yet. Thomas refused at first. He thought Evan was being paranoid. Then Evan said something that changed his mind. He told me if I called anyone, they would kill him before morning. Thomas arrived at the farmhouse after midnight. The storm was already beginning. He found Evan alive.
Barely.
Sitting inside the old barn. Waiting. But Evan was not alone. Someone else had been there. Someone had attacked him. Someone had taken the documents he collected. But they had missed one thing. The evidence hidden beneath the farmhouse. Evan told Thomas to bury the evidence. Not him. The evidence. Thomas stopped. He looked at Detective Vance. That's what the photograph shows. Detective Vance studied the image again. Thomas was not standing over a grave. He was digging a hole. A hole for a container. Not a body. But then the biggest question remained. If Thomas did not bury Evan, who did? Thomas took a long breath. I left him alive. Nobody moved. The words hung in the room. You left him alive? Thomas nodded. Evan told me to leave. He said someone was coming.
Who?
Thomas looked away. I don't know. Detective Vance leaned forward. You don't know? Thomas shook his head. I heard a vehicle. A vehicle? Black SUV.
No Marquines.
The same description from the missing dispatch call. The same vehicle seen near North River. The same vehicle connected to the night Evan vanished. Thomas continued. I hid in the woods. I watched someone arrive.
Who?
Thomas hesitated, then said, Andrew Caldwell. The name returned again. The former sheriff. The man who had controlled the investigation. The man who disappeared. But according to Thomas, Caldwell was not alone. Someone else was with him. Someone Thomas never saw clearly. Someone who gave Caldwell instructions. Thomas said he heard only one sentence. Make sure nobody finds the archive. Then everything went quiet. A few minutes later, Thomas saw Evan being moved. Not carried. Walking.
Weak.
But alive. Caldwell took him away. And Thomas never saw his brother again. The photograph was not evidence of a murder. It was evidence of a decision. Thomas had hidden the archive. He had protected Evan's final secret, but he had also stayed silent. For 25 years. Detective Vance asked the question everyone wanted answered. Why didn't you tell anyone? Thomas looked toward the window. Because outside, Ashmore was covered in the same snow that had hidden the truth for decades. Because the first person I told disappeared. He revealed another name. A private investigator he hired in 2001. Someone who promised to investigate Evan's disappearance quietly. 3 weeks after taking the case, he vanished. His files disappeared. His office was emptied overnight. Thomas said he understood then. The people behind North River were not just hiding evidence. They were removing anyone who searched for it. The investigation now had a new timeline. Rachel Bennett discovered the operation. She disappeared. Evan Mercer discovered the operation. He disappeared. Thomas tried to expose it. Someone stopped him. The pattern was clear. But one question remained. Why was Evan's body found at the farmhouse if he was alive after disappearing? Thomas did not answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his jacket. He removed a small object. An old key. Rust covered the metal. A number was engraved on it. 17. I found this after Evan was taken. Detective Vance examined it. Where? Thomas looked at her. Inside the archive. The room went silent. That was impossible. The archive had been searched. Every document. Every box. Every hidden compartment. Yet Thomas claimed there was another secret. A place they had not found. A place Evan knew about. A place connected to the number 17. Investigators returned to North River immediately. The key opened nothing in the archive. Nothing in the factory. Nothing in the hidden rooms. Until they examined the old employee records. Room 17. A location listed on a forgotten blueprint. A room beneath the factory that did not appear on any official plan. The entrance was hidden behind a concrete wall. A wall that had been built after the factory supposedly closed. When officers broke through, they found a small underground chamber. Inside was a single desk,
A chair.
and a recording device. But unlike the other recordings, this one was labeled January 14th, 2000. The final conversation. Detectives played the audio. At first, only silence. Then Evan's voice.
Weak.
But clear. If you're hearing this. A pause. I didn't disappear. The room froze. Because for 25 years, everyone believed Evan Mercer was a victim who vanished. But his own voice revealed something different. He had not been taken without a plan. He had left a message. He knew someone would find it. And the next sentence changed the entire investigation. I know who is behind North River. A pause. Footsteps in the background. Then Evan whispered, but the person you think is protecting the secret. Another pause. He is the person who created it. The recording ended. No name. No explanation. Only one final sound. A door opening. And a voice. A voice investigators had heard before. The same voice from the anonymous calls. The same voice from the warnings. The same voice that had guided them toward the truth.
The voice said,
Evan, you should have trusted me. The investigation had finally reached the beginning. And the person who held the answer had been leading them there the entire time. The voice on the recording changed everything. For 25 years, investigators believed Evan Mercer had been a man running from a secret. A man who discovered something dangerous. A man who was silenced before he could reveal the truth. But the final recording suggested something far more complicated. Evan had known someone was coming. He had prepared for it. He had left evidence behind. And most importantly, he trusted someone. Someone who had been guiding investigators through the entire case. The anonymous caller. The person who left warnings. The person who revealed locations. The person who seemed to know every hidden piece of the puzzle before police found it. The voice that had been leading them closer to the truth. But now investigators had to ask the most dangerous question of all. Was that person helping them? Or controlling them? Detective Laura Vance listened to the recording again. Then again. The final sentence echoed through the room. Evan, you should have trusted me. The voice was calm. Almost emotional. Not angry. Not threatening. It sounded like someone who believed they had been misunderstood. But that made it more disturbing. Because whoever was behind the voice had spent 25 years hiding. And now they were choosing when the truth would be revealed. The audio specialists isolated the recording, removed background noise, enhanced the voice, compared it against every known person connected to North River. The results came back after 18 hours. The voice belonged to someone who should not have been possible. Daniel Cross, the former North River operations manager. The man officially declared dead. The man whose name had appeared throughout every hidden document. The man investigators believed was either a victim or a criminal. Now they knew. Daniel Cross was alive. And he had been watching the entire investigation unfold. The discovery created chaos. Because Daniel Cross had not just survived. He had been close. Close enough to know about the archive. Close enough to know about the hidden rooms. Close enough to know where Evan's evidence was buried. He was the missing piece. The person who connected every mystery. But one question remained. Why had he waited 25 years? Why reveal the truth now? Investigators searched for Daniel Cross everywhere. Old addresses. Former employers. Financial records. Nothing. It was as if he had lived without existing. Then they found something buried inside the archive. A series of payments. Small amounts. Sent every month. For 25 years. The recipient name was hidden. But the account number was familiar. It belonged to a private medical facility in northern Minnesota. A facility that officially treated elderly patients with severe cognitive disorders. Investigators arrived the next morning. The building appeared ordinary. Quiet. Almost forgotten. Inside, they discovered a patient record that changed everything. A man had been living there for 16 years. Under a false identity. No visitors. No family. No public records. The name on the file was not Daniel Cross. But the photograph was unmistakable. It was him. Older. Weaker. But alive. When detectives entered the room, Daniel Cross was sitting beside the window. Looking outside. As if he had been waiting. He did not run. He did not deny his identity. He simply looked at Detective Vance and said, "You finally found me." The interview lasted 6 hours. Daniel Cross told a story that challenged everything investigators believed. He admitted he had worked for North River. He admitted he helped build the hidden operation. He admitted he knew about the secret archive. But he denied ordering Evan Mercer's disappearance. According to Cross, North River was created for legitimate business. The corruption came later. People with money and influence transformed the company into something else. A machine built on secrecy. A machine that survived because everyone involved had something to lose. Cross said Michael Voss was the person who enforced silence. Victor Lang was the person who financed it. Andrew Caldwell was the person who protected it. But there was someone above all of them. Someone who never appeared in the documents. Someone who controlled the operation without leaving a name. Cross called him the architect. Detective Vance asked who that was. Daniel Cross looked down. For the first time during the interview, he appeared afraid. "I don't know." The answer shocked investigators. After everything, after decades of secrets, after all the hidden files, Daniel Cross still did not know who was in control. But he knew one thing. Evan Mercer discovered the architect's identity. That was why he became a target. Not because he found North River. Because he found the person behind it. Cross explained what happened on January 14, 2000. Evan was supposed to disappear permanently. Michael Voss arranged the operation. Andrew Caldwell was ordered to handle the police response. But something went wrong. Evan was moved. Not killed. Protected. Because Daniel Cross intervened. He knew Evan had the evidence. He knew destroying him would not destroy the truth. So he made a deal. Evan would disappear. The evidence would be hidden. And one day, when the right people found it, the truth would come out. Detective Vance stopped him. You let everyone believe he was dead. Cross looked away. I had no choice. You had 25 years. I had 25 years of people trying to find me. The room went silent. Then Cross revealed the part nobody expected. Evan Mercer was alive for years after his disappearance. Not in Minnesota. Not under a false name. Somewhere else. Somewhere Daniel Cross helped him reach. But then everything changed. In 2005, Evan disappeared again. This time permanently. Cross claimed he did not know what happened. He only knew one thing. The person behind North River had found him. And after that, Evan was gone. Detectives asked where Evan's body came from. Why was he buried at the farmhouse? Cross had no answer. But he gave them a clue. The farmhouse wasn't where he was killed. The room became silent. The farmhouse was where they wanted you to think he was killed. Another false trail. Another layer of deception. Cross explained that the real location was hidden somewhere else. A place Evan had discovered before anyone. A place connected to the number 17. The underground chamber. The hidden rooms. The archive. They were all pieces of a larger map. Evan had not been hiding evidence. He had been hiding a path. A path leading to the architect. Before leaving the interview, Daniel Cross handed investigators a small envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. Not from him. From Evan. The date was 2004. Years after his disappearance. The message contained only one sentence. If they find me, they will use my death to close the story. Detective Vance read it again. Because that sentence changed the entire case. Evan knew. He knew someone would eventually find his body. He knew someone would try to make the discovery look like the end.
But it was never the end.
It was the beginning. That night, investigators searched the final location connected to the number 17. An abandoned underground facility hidden beneath an old railway station outside Ashmore. The entrance had been sealed for decades. Inside, they discovered hundreds of files.
Names.
Photographs. Recordings. Everything connected to North River. But one file stood apart. It was labeled Final Authorization. Inside was a document signed on January 13, 2000. One day before Evan disappeared. The signature was not Michael Voss. Not Victor Lang. Not Andrew Caldwell. Not Daniel Cross. It belonged to someone who had never appeared in any investigation. Someone who had no connection to North River on paper. Someone whose name appeared nowhere in the archive. Except on one document. The document that started everything. The person who authorized Evan Mercer's disappearance was someone the town had trusted for decades. Someone who had spent years demanding answers. Someone who had convinced everyone they were searching for the truth. And when Detective Vance read the name, she finally understood why the case had remained unsolved for so long. Because the person responsible was never hiding from the investigation. They were leading it. The document remained untouched for nearly an hour. Not because investigators needed more time to read it. Because they needed time to accept what they were seeing. The signature at the bottom of the authorization form belonged to the person who had spent 25 years standing in front of cameras, speaking about justice, promising answers, and assuring the people of Ashmore that Evan Mercer's disappearance would never be forgotten. The signature belonged to Thomas Mercer. Evan Mercer's own brother. The man who appeared to be the final victim of the tragedy. The grieving sibling. The person who had spent decades searching for the truth. The person who had helped detectives uncover the archive. The person who had walked into the sheriff's office and claimed he knew where Evan died. Now his name was sitting on the document that authorized Evan's disappearance. The room became silent, because the investigation had reached the one possibility nobody wanted to consider. What if Thomas Mercer had not been searching for the truth? What if he had been controlling how much of the truth was discovered? Detective Laura Vance looked back at every moment, every interview, every statement, every emotional appearance, every tear. Suddenly, every memory had a different meaning. Thomas had always known where to look. He always had the right information at the right time. He always appeared just before investigators reached another breakthrough. At first, it looked like cooperation. Now it looked like direction. He had not been following the investigation. He had been guiding it. The search for Thomas Mercer began immediately. But once again, he was gone. His house was empty. His phone was disconnected. His vehicle was missing. A man who spent 25 years refusing to leave his brother's story behind had disappeared the moment that story began pointing toward him. But Thomas left something behind. A recording. Not hidden. Not encrypted. Placed on the kitchen table.
As if he wanted it found.
Detectives played the file. Thomas's voice filled the room. Older. Tired.
But calm.
I know what you're thinking. A pause. You think I killed my brother? Another pause. Maybe that's easier to believe. Detective Vance listened carefully. Because Thomas did not sound like someone trying to escape. He sounded like someone preparing to confess. I didn't create North River. I didn't build the system. But I helped protect it. The admission was devastating. Thomas explained that he learned about North River through Evan. At first, he thought Evan was obsessed. He thought his brother had discovered something that was bigger in his mind than reality. Then he saw the evidence. The names. The payments. The hidden operations. He realized Evan was right. But by then, it was already too late. The people behind North River knew Evan was investigating. And they knew Thomas was the only person Evan trusted. The recording continued. That was the mistake. I thought I could protect him. I thought I could negotiate. But people like them don't negotiate. They control. Thomas admitted he made a deal. A deal with Andrew Caldwell. A deal that would keep Evan alive. A deal that required Thomas to stay silent. The authorization document was not a death order. It was a transfer order. Thomas claimed he signed it because it was the only way to prevent Evan from being killed immediately. But the agreement failed. Because someone higher than Caldwell changed the plan. Someone wanted Evan gone permanently. The recording stopped for several seconds. Then Thomas said something that changed the case again. The person behind everything wasn't interested in money. He was interested in control. Detective Vance froze. Because this matched every piece of evidence. North River. The archive. The disappearances. The false deaths. The blackmail. The entire operation was not just about illegal business. It was about information. Who had it? Who controlled it? Who could destroy someone with it? Thomas revealed that Evan discovered the existence of a master archive, a collection of information on everyone connected to the operation. Politicians, law enforcement, business leaders, even people who believed they were innocent. The person behind North River had spent decades collecting secrets, not because they feared exposure, because secrets were power. And Evan found the one thing that could destroy that power, the identity of the architect. But Thomas never said the name, because he claimed he didn't know it. He only knew where Evan hid the final evidence. A location never mentioned in any document. A place Evan called the last room. Investigators searched the remaining North River records. They found a reference hidden inside Daniel Cross's files. A property purchased under a fake company in 1998. A small building outside Ashmore. A place listed as abandoned. But when police arrived, it was not abandoned. Someone had been living there. Inside, Investigators found evidence of recent activity:
Food.
clothing, medical supplies, and hundreds of pages of handwritten notes. The handwriting belonged to Evan Mercer, the man who had been declared dead, the man whose body was found, the man who had been the center of the mystery for 25 years. The notes revealed the final chapter. After disappearing in 2000, Evan spent years gathering evidence. He followed the network.
He tracked the people involved.
He discovered that North River was only one operation among many. And eventually, he found the architect. But Evan did not expose him. Not immediately. Because he discovered something worse. The architect had prepared for that possibility. If Evan released the evidence too soon, thousands of documents would disappear. Witnesses would vanish. The entire operation would go underground again. So, Evan waited. He built the backup. A final collection of evidence. A way to expose everything at once. Then, in 2005, he disappeared. The notes explained why. He knew someone close to him had betrayed him. Someone he trusted. Someone who knew his plans. Someone who had access to his final location. The final pages were incomplete. The last entry was dated 3 days before Evan's death. It read, "I know who betrayed me." Below that, "I know why." And beneath that,
A name.
the ink was damaged. Only half remained visible. But forensic experts recovered enough. The first name was clear. Thomas. The second part was missing. Thomas's name. Again. The investigation had reached its most painful point. The person who spent decades searching for Evan had also played a role in hiding him. But the question remained. Was Thomas a murderer? Or was he another person trapped inside the same machine? Detectives found the answer in the final video file hidden inside Evan's last room. The recording showed Evan. Older. Exhausted. But alive. He was speaking directly to the camera. "If you found this, then they failed." A small smile appeared. "Or I failed." Evan explained everything. He knew Thomas betrayed him. But he also knew why. Thomas was threatened. His family was threatened. Everyone connected to Evan became a target. Thomas did not choose power. He chose survival. But Evan had one final warning. The person controlling this never needed everyone to be loyal. He only needed everyone to be afraid. Then Evan looked directly into the camera and said the words that would finally reveal the truth. "The architect is not someone inside North River." A pause. The architect is someone who built the investigation around North River. The video ended. Detectives stared at the screen, because suddenly everything made sense. The missing evidence, the controlled discoveries, the anonymous messages, the perfectly timed clues. The person behind the cold case had not been hiding from investigators. They had been shaping the investigation from the beginning. And the final clue was waiting inside the first case file ever created. The original missing person report from January 2000. A report signed by the first officer who handled Evan Mercer's disappearance. A report that had been overlooked for 25 years. Because nobody ever questioned the signature at the bottom. The signature that belonged to the person who opened the case. The signature that started the search. The signature that buried the truth. And when Detective Vance turned the page and saw the name, she finally understood why Evan Mercer had spent his final years trying to expose one person. Because the person who destroyed his life had been there from the very first night. Not as a suspect. Not as a witness. But as the person everyone trusted most. The original missing person report had been stored in the oldest section of the Ashmore Sheriff's Office archive. A place where forgotten files went to disappear. Boxes stacked against concrete walls. Paper records untouched for decades. Evidence from cases that no longer appeared in daily conversations. For 25 years, Evan Mercer's file had remained there. A symbol of failure. A reminder of a mystery nobody could solve. But hidden inside that file was the one piece of evidence that had been ignored from the beginning. The signature. Detective Laura Vance stared at the document beneath the bright forensic lights. The report was dated January 14, 2000. The day Evan Mercer vanished. The first official record of the investigation. The first explanation of what happened. The first version of the story that everyone believed. At the bottom of the page was the signature. The officer who created the report. The person who controlled the first hours of the investigation. The person who decided which leads mattered. Which witnesses were interviewed. Which possibilities were ignored. The signature belonged to Andrew Caldwell, the former sheriff, the man who had disappeared.